it should come as no surprise to anybody who's interacted with me for more than about a minute that my favorite game series of all time is the Shin Megami Tensei series. Now, I have been playing and loving these games ever since I was way too young to be enjoying them. And whether that be because of the fantastic soundtrack, the interesting yet intriguing gameplay, one particular reason that having done this project and doing a lot of reflecting on it, I've come to enjoy a lot more: the art. The art for Shin Megami Tensei up until around 2008 was handled by a man named Kazuma Kaneko, and Kazuma Kaneko was interested in things like UFOs and the Loch Ness Monster ever since he was very young. As he grew older, this obsession turned into an intrigue in myths and religion, and you can see that in a lot of his art, as most of the demon designs for the Shin Megami Tensei series are based on some sort of religious or mythic figure. The piece of art that I think exemplifies not only his style, but the series as a whole, is this piece right here from Shin Megami Tensei 3, known as Birth. An immediate glance at this piece, you can tell that it's a very claustrophobic one. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of figures all around this one figure in the center. We can see that they're all different shapes, sizes, colors. Some are humanoid, some are more beast-like, some are something completely different. And all of the figures around the figure in the center have their eyes locked on the figure in the center. And that figure in the center is actually the main character of the game. That's you. Now, this piece is entitled Birth, which I have reason to believe ties back into the story of the game, where you play as a high school student who ends up being turned into a demon when the world literally flips in on itself. You are reborn as a not quite human, not quite demon being known as the Demi-Fiend, and you set out on this new strange world filled with demons in order to rebuild the world in your image. The title not only refers to the rebirth of the world, but the birth of the Demi-Fiend, the character in the center. Kazuma Kaneko himself has stated that this image is framed like a traditional depiction of the birth of Jesus Christ, and it being holiday time, and I drive around all the time and I see these little nativity scenes up, I really can see that. You can definitely see, because especially in those nativity scenes, you see all the statues are kind of have their gaze locked on the center, much like how all the demons have their gaze locked on the Demi-Fiend in this piece. I think one of the most interesting things about Kaneko's art and designs is that he pulls from so many different things, like different religions and mythologies. For example, right to the above and to the left of the Demi-Fiend, we see a crow-like demon who is Yatagarasu, which is pulled from Japanese lore, but very top center is Thor, and to the right of him is Baphomet, which is a demon based on Southeast Asian religion. There's a lot that he's pulling from. And I think Kaneko, and not only that, but the series as a whole, has a really interesting take on Orientalism. As you can see in this image, we have different demons from all kinds of religions and mythologies from all over the world, as if this new world that the character is being born into has no boundary. The Vortex world is very much a world in its baby state. It can become whatever. It should be noted that this series has always prided itself on the player's ability to choose. Your choices in the game ever since the 90s and the 80s would be totaled up, and depending on what you did, you would get an ending, which is very ahead of its time. And you would be typically split into law, chaos, or neutrality, but this game gets rid of that system and does something entirely different. And I think it's very interesting, especially considering the fact that you are rebuilding the world. That is the end goal. You're supposed to make it up this gigantic tower and basically present your reason and rebuild the world. It's also important to mention that this series as a whole was based on John Lennon's song Imagine, and the song itself says, "Imagine there's no countries." Kaneko and the team at Atlas are directly challenging and taking down this East versus West barrier. Essentially what they're saying is they're leaving it in the Demi-Fiend, aka your hands, to rebuild the world. It's whatever you want. Do you want a world where everyone lives in peace? Do you want a world where the weak fear the strong? That's up to you. Kazuma Kaneko unfortunately did step down from the role as series lead artist around 2008, and a few other people have taken up the mantle, but there's something about Kazuma Kaneko's art, just the shading and the lighting, that make it so electric. but there's a lot of cultures hidden under the layers if you really stop to look. I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed this project so much, because having to actually stop and look at something, you really begin to see the finer details a little bit more, and it helped me appreciate one of my favorite games of all time so much better.